Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor. Before we begin, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. This session is recorded and will be available on demand in 24 to 48 hours in the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It will run for approximately 1 hour with times for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speakers for introductions.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Daniel. It's good to be on the show today. I hope you can all hear me. You can all see me. I'll also welcome Bethany to join us and help us kick off with today's closing ceremony. So if you have been with us for the last 21 days, we have come to the end of the JavaScript AI Build-a-thon, and we'll talk more about how this journey has been. So for now, Bethany, maybe you can say hi to the audience and maybe introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I am Bethany. I've been part of the team with Julia for the JS AI Build-a-thon, and I hope you've learned a lot for this period. It's been about 3 weeks. Yeah, so we're just here to wrap up and tell you, probably cover what we've learned and what are the next steps.
Awesome. Yeah. And I see we have several people joining the chat. So if you could please drop a quick introduction, just let us know who you are, where you are joining us from. We know we have a very diverse representation across the globe. So it would be good to have a sense of who we have represented. If you were part of our study jam, also mention the study jam that you participated in. And if you already finished the build-a-thon and you have your project ready, you can share your project on the chat and invite the community to vote for your project. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So looking at the chat, so let's just take some time, introduce yourself. I'm seeing several highs coming in. So just let us know where you're joining us from as well. And if you also participated in the build-a-thon, you can also share your feedback. I mean, one of the main objectives for this session is to hear from you in terms of how the experience was. This was the very first build-a-thon that we've held. So I know that so far we've already taken some notes in terms of how we can improve our resources and material for you. So we'd want to continue hearing from you guys on the chat. Just let us know what worked best for you. What did you enjoy the most? And what are the areas of improvement for the upcoming build-a-thons? And I think, Bethany, I'll throw you on the spotlight here and maybe ask you, from your experience, what really stood out for you throughout the entire 21 days?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot, especially JavaScript, because I'm a Python developer. So coming in and learning how you can do everything with JavaScript. And then it was like all the pieces on Gen AI came together. Like, you always hear all the different things. You hear MCP, you hear agents, but then how do you connect all of them into like one application at the end? Or how do you connect all of them to come up with a solution at the end? So that connection was also that came in handy. And then there's a lot of interactions we saw on Discord as well as LinkedIn. I've gotten a lot of LinkedIn tags where everyone is like, yeah, I've learned this, this is what I've built, for telling us I made an error because JavaScript is very brutal. So if you miss a semicolon, it's like the end of you. Python, we don't have that.
It's
but
not
like,
that bad.
yeah. Yeah.
I was hoping to win you over and just onboard you from Python and just join us in this world. Will that happen or not yet?
Maybe. It's not a yes, maybe.
Okay, we still have time to go over. But yeah, I think that's really good. Still waiting to hear from the members watching on the chat, what really stood out for them. And as you've said, just seeing how every single concept comes together. This is one of those learn by doing experiences. So you're not subjected to like go through a bunch of theories and then later on come and implement something. That is something that I really loved about the structure of the build-a-thon. You're actively doing practices and exercises and quests to allow you to just practice the concepts that you're learning. So that's the really key thing that stood out for me. And yeah, I think as we continue, we'll have more people join and share their experiences as well. So for today, we're going to have two key agenda items. Number one, we're just going to do a quick recap of the journey that you took from when we started June 9th all the way to today. And then we're going to spend some time talking about what comes next. The journey is only beginning. Believe me, what you did or what you were exposed to during this build-a-thon doesn't really cover the full spectrum of how the AI and agentic development now currently looks like. Something that I also realized is by the time we were launching the build-a-thon, up until now, we have some things that we have to go and change because we've already seen some improvements in some of the offerings that you already worked with. So we'll just spend some time talking about what will come next and how you can plug in more into the community. All right, so with that, let's get into it. As usual, as we continue, feel free to drop your questions, your suggestions, your recommendations on the chat, and we'll pick them live as we continue. And I see some people sharing their experiences. Andrew says that the build-a-thon was a great learning experience where we explored new ideas and built something useful. That's really good to hear. Toshik says that I developed a friend who's your best mental companion. That was really one of the best projects that I saw being submitted. And at some point, we'll get to walk through some of the projects that we saw. So really good job, guys, for all that you did throughout the build-a-thon. So let's get into the recap. If you're just joining and you're hearing about the build-a-thon for the first time, this has been, I think, 21-day long experience where we started June 9th. That's when we're actually here on Reactors with our launch call. And we just launched this series of quests that will allow you to implement different AI and agentic concepts while actively building an application. So that's what we've been doing, spread out across 3 weeks. We observed that some people finished all the quests between the first 1.5 weeks, which is fine. We still have some that are going through the quests. And the beauty of this is that this build-a-thon was designed to be completely standalone and self-paced. So you just land on the repository and then work with whichever schedule works best for you. And you can basically just move at a comfortable pace throughout the quests. So these are the quests that we tackled for this first version of the build-a-thon. But as you will see as we progress, we're going to introduce more and more angles in which you can start experimenting with AI. Something that we also saw quite a lot was a very vibrant and active community online. So we've seen people sharing the excitement, sharing the mistakes that they made, sharing the learning moments, some of those aha moments where you're like, you've discovered something for the very first time, or you've been hearing about a concept, but for the very first time, it now made sense. So we've seen a lot of that being shared online on socials. And I think what we'll explore next time is we'll try and have like a social media award where we'll just get the most active champs on social media and just give them some bit of recognition. So that's something we'll definitely work on for the next iteration of the program. But we've seen a lot of people just sharing encouragement. This wasn't an easy quest, especially if you were just starting out with AI. There was such a lot of information for you to just process. And the fact that you're actively building something wasn't the easiest experience. So kudos to everyone who made it through and for everyone who kind of just shared their encouragement with the rest online. So where it all started was on this one page. This is the GitHub repository where everything begins. I say this because the build-a-thon, as you saw, is designed to track your progress as you continue. So that means you have to have this one entry point, which is the repository that we're working with. If you scan the QR code on the screen, or if you visit the link that I believe will be shared on the chat, you will be able to find this repository. Please note, it will be really helpful if you bookmark this page because we're going to be sharing a lot more in the future in terms of different things you can do with AI and JavaScript. So this is definitely a resource that you want to have handy. And then you'll see that I'm canceling out the started part because this is where your journey can start at any given time. As I said, it's built to be completely self-paced. So you can come in at any time and decide that you want to start your learning journey at that specific moment. So if probably Daniel or Bethany could drop the link on the chat, that will be really helpful for everyone to follow along as well. Okay, so the grand finale, the build-a-thon was this last quest 9, which was different from the others, because Quest 9 called for you to actually pause for a moment. Now, after learning all these different concepts, Quest 9 actually called for you to sit for a moment, have a moment of reflection, and think of an active problem. It could be a problem that is personal to you, is societal, educational, just a problem that you are passionate enough to actually implement a solution for. And then once you've identified a problem that you can tackle, instead of starting from scratch, this is again something that we tried to eliminate, because putting together a full AI or agentic system has a lot of moving pieces. I mean, for you to even implement something like RAG, behind the scenes, you would need 3, 4, 5 services all configured to talk to each other. So all that would be a lot of work. It would take a lot of time. So to ease that experience for you, we recommend that you visit one of our 2 template galleries that will allow you to browse through different templates. And these galleries just have end-to-end samples that implement a certain architectural diagram. So let me show this in action. I'm just going to switch over to my browser. And I've said we have 2 template galleries that you can choose templates from. So the first one is the awesome AZD template gallery, which, as you can see, has a list of different templates that you can use. The awesome AZD template gallery has a mix of both AI and non-AI templates. So you can take some time. You can filter by language. Of course, for this build-a-thon, our focus was JavaScript, TypeScript. So you're going to filter down by language. You can filter down by framework, services, databases. So you can explore the different samples that we have. And then once you find a template that kind of contains the key services that you want to implement. So for example, let's say you want to, this is not AI related, our focus was really AI. So let's say you want to implement a ChatGPT application style. You can basically go for this template. It's really, really advanced. It has implementation of RAG, it's using LangChain, so it's a really good getting started template. And then you have the instructions on what you need to do in order to pull down the code, deploy it in one command, and then just work with the code to customize it to fit your use case. So that's basically what most of you did. And you were able to identify a template that you used for your solution. And then the other template gallery that we have is the Build with AI template gallery. Now, the difference between the two is that this one has only AI templates. So you won't find any project here that does not have an AI angle. And then number 2, this second library has very specific hand-picked templates by Microsoft that you can choose from, okay? But for the AZD template gallery, this, as you can see, has a mix of Microsoft authored and community authored templates. So you can basically just find from a variety of options a template that works best for you. And then you'll customize the templates, make it fit your vision. And then for this specific build-a-thon, we also had these 2 additional steps where you submit the project once you're done building the solution, and then you rally up your squad and get some votes to own the People's Choice Spotlight. So I know most of you did this, but in case you're yet to complete this step, one of the announcements we'll share today is that we have extended the deadline. So initially the deadline was today, 30th, but we'll give it up to Friday this week. So if you're working on a solution, ensure that you submit it latest Friday this week for you to be eligible for the participant badge. All right. So that's basically it. Once you're done, we have some templates that you can use here to just share your projects on socials. So you can choose to share your photo, project summary, and a link to your GitHub account, as well as just the issue number, so that people can easily identify your project and vote for it. If you're not comfortable adding your photo, you can add a screenshot of your solution and we'll be able to work from there. All right, so up to now, I believe we have like 10 projects that have already been submitted. So again, big shout out to everyone who was able to get this in time. And I will hand it over to Bethany, who is going to talk to us and walk us through some of the awesome submissions that we've seen coming in. Some of the solutions are really, really personal. I mean, if you've been watching the that news. We've had like a lot of very difficult political disruptions happening, and so you can see that people are really having problems that are close to them, close to their societies, and working with technology to provide solutions for this. So I'll hand it over to Bethany, who's going to just walk us through some of these submissions.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. So I'll share my screen. Let me wait for a minute. Yeah, thank you, Danny. So there's a couple of projects, but I'll highlight a couple of them as well. One of the projects that I won't highlight what they build, but how they built it. So this project is a VMware tools.com. It tries to extend with MCP. And what I liked about this project is it was completed directly through GitHub Copilot Web Editor. Like, the only thing they had to do was to go to GitHub Copilot and ask about how can I automate the entire process? How can I go in there and build an application? And then we have a couple of interesting projects. So all of them are chat interfaces for different use cases. The first one is this project by Toshi that talks about how you have your own mental health friend. So I tested it out. I hope you can be able to see my screen, but let me zoom in a bit. So this is Vish, my friendly AI companion. And the idea of Vish is to be able to support you and provide a safe space so you can chat about how you're feeling. And the idea is they're just there to listen. So I asked about, okay, how do I know if I have depression or something of that sort? So that's the most common thing people go to Google about, right? So you'll be like, okay, how do I know if I have this disease? What are the symptoms? And you can see it's giving us a really good response. So it talks about recognizing changes in your mood or your well-being, and it also talks about some of the common signs, which probably are feeling sad almost every day. So it's telling you it's either most of the day, nearly every day, for at least 2 weeks. So if you have lots of interest or pleasure in things, and then the good thing about this is it has a tag down here where it tells you the resources I'm drawing from, which is I don't know. I don't know if this is yeah. What is depression? Yes, this is a good resource. It's truncated halfway, so I'm not sure why, but I'm guessing it's because of how they trained it. It was chunked probably, and then it tells you what is depression, and then it tells you what is bad about it, depression 101, how it works, and everything, which is a good thing, right? That's the first project that I saw. Another one is around safety when you're dealing with mining. So this solution is called deepen by Josephat, and he's talking about how do you ensure you're able to access real-time safety guidance and monitoring when you're mining, especially in underground mining. So the question I asked here was, okay, how can I be safe when mining in an underground tunnel? Let me say cave, because in Kenya we have a lot of caves based on our history. So I just ask, okay, what should I check for in a cave? And it's telling me inspect for loose rocks, ensure this ground is stable, check if there's any signs of movement before entry. And then it's also telling me about if there's any recent seismic activity, do not enter, and so on and so forth, right? And then there's another solution I saw around climate action. So this solution is built by Daniel, and it's about how to make the environmental impact personal and actionable. So how do you ensure when you're dealing with the environment and climate change, how do you ensure you make that impact? And with this, it has a bit of questions. So this is what I liked about it. So it has a couple of prompts. And one of the things I tried was how can I get involved in local climate action? So, like, if I want to do all this, how do I get involved in it? And then, so of course, with AI, you give it some time to give you a response. And then it's supposed to give you, okay, if you're trying to help in a local climate action, this is what you do. So you assess your interest, research basically where you are, research and try and figure out how can I help in the area that I'm in? And then it has a couple of resources down here that you can be able to go in and click and be able to check and see, okay, is this something I can be able to get access to? And then the other one, before two more. The other one is about the Sri Lanka assistant. Again, this is about checking on the legal AI assistant for any problems you might have specific to Sri Lanka. It was built by, I'm not sure, Ramiru. Let me say Ramiru. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. And then the project was about probably the different things happening in the country and how you can be able to use AI to understand what's happening. So, for example, I don't know if there's any tax changes in your country, but there's one in ours as well. The question I'm asking is, when do the 2025 tax changes take effect? And the idea is it will be able to respond with, okay, this is when they take change, and this is how you can be able to navigate. Okay, as it loads, let me go to the last project, which is around Jua Katiba. It's a Swahili combination of two words, which means know your constitution, basically. And this was built by Steven. And the solution is basically how you can be able to use and understand the Constitution of Kenya, right? It was built by the group in Kirinyaga, that's the Tech to Give group. They have a study jam, so that's why I know that's how they built it. And the question I had for them was, okay, what does the Constitution say about being a Kenyan citizen? And it gave me a response and some reference. And then the good thing I liked about this solution was you can go on and ask, like it suggests prompts based on the question you asked. So you can go ahead and ask, okay, so if I'm a citizen, how can my citizenship get revoked? It's told me I don't know. So I'm not sure if that's the correct answer because I also don't know if you can get revocation for citizenship. I guess it's treason or something. And then let's go back to the last application that we saw. Yeah. So it's telling us the tax changes in Sri Lanka start from April 1, 2025. And you can be able to see it's giving us the citation as well. It's giving us all the information we need. So those are some of the projects that were built. Most of them are very UI based. Yeah, this is the Parliament of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, and it shows us the tax amendment and when it was done, which is very, very interesting. Like you can get access to the PDF and everything. So those are some of the projects that were submitted. You can find all the projects here under the GitHub issues in GitHub. If you liked any of the projects or if you want to support the projects, you can just go ahead and give them a thumbs up. The reaction is down here. So you can go ahead and react and give them a thumbs up. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to vote. I think I'll just vote for all of them. But yeah, that's it about the submissions that we've had. And thank you so much for all the wonderful projects. Back to you, Julia.
Awesome, amazing. I think it's really nice to see what you all were able to do. I mean, in a matter of just a few weeks, especially for those who are just getting started. So really good job to everyone who was able to get their projects in. And as I said, we extended the deadline. So if you are yet to submit your project, ensure you do so by end of week so that you're eligible to get the participant badge. Now, as Bethany was doing the presentation, we got a few comments and questions on the chat. So we have one from Paulina, and her question is, are there any templates that don't require me to deploy to Azure? I have insufficient quota. So when working with these deployed models, I think that's the biggest challenge that we've seen people facing, the quota issues and limitations. And so my recommendation to you for that is, once you identify a template you want to use, right? So you're basing that on the problem you've identified, and based on the structure of the template, you feel like this has most of what you need to implement already implemented. So go on and pull that template. You will get the code. And then what you do is you swap out what would otherwise talk to AI Foundry, and then just pass in your GitHub models credentials. This will allow you to work with the same templates, experiment, and work with the models that are hosted on GitHub models as opposed to those on AI Foundry, because if you're going to just deploy the models, they will likely need you to have some available quota. And if you're out of quota, my recommendation is just pull the template, since it will have most of the code already ready for you, the other services and resource that you need all deployed for you. But then when it comes to the configuration for the model to use, swap that out with what you covered in quest 1, which was around GitHub models. You can get your developer key and you're able to do the local experimentation. So that is my recommendation if you want to find a workaround for that specific challenge. So if we can switch back to the slides, we are now going to quickly talk about what you're able to cover. And behind all this, I mean, I don't think there's anyone who was able to do all this on their own. We had a very strong and vibrant community on Discord. So if you're yet to join the Discord space, I strongly recommend you join us there. This way, if you have any questions, if you're hitting any challenges, you'll get someone who can easily help unblock you. Okay, so let's quickly get into some of the concepts that you covered, and I'm also going to combine this with what will be coming next. Let me just check through the chat, see if we have any questions. Bernard saying, before the build-a-thon, I didn't know you can have an AI agent built with JavaScript and TypeScript. Yes, that is very much possible. I'm glad that you discovered that in the build-a-thon. All right, someone is asking if we submitted around 4 hours ago, will that be considered as a submission? Yes, every project that is submitted all the way till Friday this week will be considered, so no need to worry there. All right, so let's move on. As we've been talking about GitHub models, I think this is like the most interesting thing for me. I say this because for a very long time, I just used to hear people talk about language models, what they're doing, how powerful they are, some of the limitations they have. And the only way I could interact with it was ideally through ChatGPT. That's when I could try different prompts, just see it work. But then I realized, especially if you're in the tech space, you want to interact with these models more to understand how they work, what limitations to have, what safety guardrails to put in place, especially if you're going to be building AI experiences for real-world customers. So GitHub models, for me, I feel like is that one step that removes all the barriers of entry, because all you need for you to access all these models is basically a GitHub account. So this is one of the most interesting concepts that you guys went through. And as you can see on GitHub models, you're able to have access to several models. You'll have a very rich and diverse catalog to choose from. So models from different providers, OpenAI, Mistral, Google, Microsoft Research. So you're able to experiment with a variety of models. What I also love is that you can come in and play around with the parameters, change the different settings. You can adjust the reasoning effort if you're working with reasoning models. So for me, I think this is a really good starting point for you to get real hands-on with how these models work and what you need to do to ensure you're getting your desired output. Then the 2 key features that I love about GitHub models, which you had a chance to play around with, was 1, the compare feature, where you're able to have this side-by-side comparison. So you can send in a single prompt, and then if you have the compare feature open, you'll basically be sending that to 2 different models that you want to have that side-by-side comparison of how they perform. So this will help you as you make your decisions in terms of what models to settle for when you're taking these to your applications. And then 2, we have this new feature that you can also use to actively monitor the consumption of tokens. Remember, at the end of the day, when you're working with models, the currency that you're talking about is tokens. You're charged based on the tokens consumed. So on GitHub models, you're also able to just compare how different models consume tokens, as well as the latency. How long does a specific model take to respond to an ask? So this is definitely something that was a key highlight for me. And the better part of it is that for you to move from playground to actual code, this is as easy as just clicking, use the model, and then you get some sample code that is already configured to work with the model that you're playing around with. So if on GitHub models, you're experimenting with OpenAI GPT 4.0, for example, once you click on this use this model button, it basically gives you sample code that is ready, and that is ready for you to implement and use that specific model. So this is really, really good, especially if you're just starting off. You have a variety of options in terms of the language to use, the SDKs to use. So for the build-a-thon, we were focusing on JavaScript. And then, yeah, if let's say your boss is asking you to implement a quick prototype for an AI feature, probably, or a quick proof of concept, before you even ask for like any budget, you can easily just put together a quick prototype using GitHub model. So that's like one of the key use cases. And then once you're ready to test this in a production ready environment, you come back on GitHub models and you're able to get a production key. This will immediately provision everything for you on AI Foundry. And I'm sure that all of you saw how seamless that process was. But the question now comes, what if I want to work in a local environment? Or what if I'm designing an application where the actual users have limitations in terms of their access to the internet? So what we didn't have in the current version of the build-a-thon that we will implement in the next one is something that is fairly new, something that was announced last month at Microsoft Build, which is Foundry Local. Foundry Local is a tool that allows you to safely design, customize, and manage AI models and applications on your own device, right? So right now we're talking about you downloading models literally and running them on your own computer. So that means at no point will you be sending any data outside your machine, right? And so that is privacy and security out of the box. If you're working with GitHub models, there is that requirement that you have to be connected to the internet. In as much as we have this generous free offering, you still need to have access to the internet every time you're running your application. But if you're trying to build, let's say, solutions for people who have the limited access to the internet, then probably that might be an issue. Now, a really good tool that you can consider is Foundry Local. Consider is Foundry Local, which you will get to play around with in the next version of the build-a-thon. Again, we've talked about the privacy and security advantage that comes with Foundry Local. Since everything is running on your own device, the model is running on your device, then you can expect low latency. You're basically not waiting for your request to be sent somewhere and that server to come back to you with a response. Everything is running on device, so you're going to experience very low latency. And then, of course, you're not paying any provider for any compute resources. In this case, you're hosting everything on your own, so it's definitely cost efficient since you're looking at zero cost for you to actually work with Gen AI. So that's really, really exciting. One of the things that I can't wait for you guys to actually start experimenting with. And just to like give you a sneak peek of what you expect to find once we launch this version 2 of the build-a-thon is, and by the way, if you want to like install Foundry Local, if you're on Windows, this is the command to do so. If you're on Mac OS, these are the equivalent commands. So what you'll expect to find is once you have Foundry Local installed, number one, you can run the command Foundry model list. What this will do is that it's going to just print out a list of all the models that you can run on your machine. So you can see we have this list of different models. So we have like the name of the model, that's the model alias column. We have the device. So you can see we have GPU, CPU, NPU, and the key advantage of Foundry Local here is that once you select the model that you want to work with, Foundry Local is going to automatically download the model variant that is best suited for your system's hardware and software configuration. So that means if, let's say, you're running on a GPU machine, it will automatically pick the model variant that best suits your machine to give you the best performance. That's something that is really, really, really cool about Foundry Local. You don't have to worry about making any configurations. It will basically just tell this from your device. And then we have the file size. So as you can see, we have really, really small sized models that can comfortably run on your computer. So basically this will be like the entry point. We started this month's build-a-thon on GitHub models, but the next iteration will allow you to work in a completely offline environment, which for me, I think is a really, really cool addition to our resources. So once you've seen the list of the models, then the next command you run is Foundry model run, and then pass in the name of the model you want to work with. So in this case, I went with Phi 3.5 mini. If it is not downloaded on your machine, it's going to download it fast, and then it will render this interactive mode on the CLI, and you're able to send in prompts and get responses with just simply running locally right here on your CLI. As I said before, we have different modes of interacting with Foundry Local. You're not just limited to the CLI. So of course, the other option that you have, we have the API, we have the CLI, and we also have the SDK. And of course, for sure, we have the JavaScript SDK that you can install using the command that you see on the screen. Once you do that, now you see something that is more similar to what you have been working with throughout the build-a-thon, which you can see you're able to now implement real applications that are running and are powered by models that are just running locally on a computer. So that's something that is really, really cool. And please stay tuned. We'll have more and more resources on this. And yeah, I think I just wanted to show you a sneak peek of what you expect to see in the coming programs. Again, I'm just going to take some time, switch over to the chat, see if we have any questions that have come up. All right, so I just see a lot of conversations around excitement around building agents. I will also talk a bit more about what's going to be possible moving forward. Yeah, so this is really good. All right, okay, so let's continue. The next thing we're going to talk about briefly is the concept of RAG. If you played around with GitHub models, you must have realized that it's actually possible to have some bit of RAG right there on the marketplace as you're interacting with GitHub models. So we have this grounding data section. So if you are keen enough, you'll realize that you can come in here, add in some piece of data. So I just added the Contoso Electronics employee handbook that we provided as sample data. And once you add your PDF, it's going to be vectorized and an index is going to be created for you. And right now you'll see that right there on GitHub models, you're able to ask questions and the model is going to ground the responses based on your provided data. Now for the quest, the RAG quest that you implemented, we're just going to briefly just walk through the concept of RAG and then see what will come next in the subsequent version of the build-a-thon. So when you're talking about RAG, just a quick overview, and I think if you've showed up in most of our sessions, this might look like a repetition of what we've covered before, but let me just quickly walk through it for the sake of those who just joined us. But when you're talking about RAG, RAG is in real sense just a combination of two components. We have a retriever and we have a generator. And what happens or how RAG works is that once you land on an application, you basically ask a question, you send in a prompt. The retriever is going to perform a quick search. So based on your prompt, it's going to do a quick search into your knowledge base. And then as a result, it's going to send back some relevant documents. From this search, it's not going to send back the actual answer, but it's going to send back like a chunk of information where your answer is likely contained. And then what happens next is that the retriever will pass both your question and these relevant documents to the generator, which is the language model, and the generator basically formulates the answer that is sent back to you. So this is the typical RAG pipeline that you see in production. But this is not what you guys did in this month's build-a-thon. Because what you did was a really lightweight file-based retrieval method that is basically a very manual way of achieving what I just described. Okay, so we were using the PDF parse library. Then as you can see here, we are manually chunking the data, and then we just define a simple but very manual scoring mechanism, just to look at the terms that you're passing in and then do a keyword search based on this data that we are extracting from the PDF. This does not really follow the industry practice of implementing RAG. This is not scalable, but we use this just for the demonstration purposes. Okay, so what will come next is we're going to just look at how you're going to get into that industry practice of implementing RAG, which, as you will see in the next few minutes, involves you building a knowledge base. You are working with a PDF file, and you've seen the piece of code that would handle that file, but in real sense, you'll be designing systems that will work with tons and tons of data. So what you do as the first step is that you have to create your knowledge base. What this entails is that you come in with your data, could be text, could be CSV, whichever format, and then this is passed through an embedding model, and the embedding model will basically just convert it into its vector representation. This text as it is in human readable format, but it has to go through a special model that will just convert it into a machine readable format. That is basically what is happening here. And then both the text and its vector representation will be stored in a vector database. Again, a concept that you didn't get to explore in this build-a-thon, but in the next one is something that will be factored in. So basically, this is the process you repeat for every single document that you want to include in your knowledge base. So as you can see, you cannot afford to work with that manual implementation that we did for like a large-scale application. Now, once you have built your knowledge base, now the RAG pipeline consists of 3 key processes. Number one is that when a user now comes into your application, they send in a user query. You first have to embed or vectorize their query. So you're going to use the same embedding model that you used and then convert the user's question or prompt into its vector representation. And then what you do from there is, based on their prompt or their query, you're now going to perform a search. So in the vector database that you created, you're going to perform a search. And as I said earlier, you're going to retrieve some bit of information that is likely going to contain the answer to their question. And then that is what you pass along with the initial question to the model. And then the model is basically just going to formulate an answer from that. So basically what happens is you're going to tell the model, hey, answer this question based on this information that I'm giving you. And that is how RAG basically works. And I know at this point, if after breaking it down that way, it may look complicated. And I promise you it is, but it is also not as complicated. Why am I saying this? As part of the build-a-thon, you guys learned about LangChain.js, which is one of the frameworks that really abstracts away all of these complex workflows and just allows you to easily define this entire implementation in very few lines of code, all right? But I know you may not believe me up to that point, so I'm just going to share an example, a quick sneak peek into what you're going to be looking at next. And as you can see here, this is one of the resources that we shared, one of the samples that we actually have. I don't know if it's available on the template galleries that I shared, but as you can see, I have this application where I am passing in a video URL and a question that will probably need someone to understand the video. So in this case, I'm passing in a video, and this URL is the launch call that we had June 9th. And my question to it is, hey, summarize the program that is being announced in this video. The expectation is that the application I'm working with will actually interpret the video and give me an accurate summary of what was announced. And if you go through this response, you'll see that it's basically talking about the build-a-thon, and it's very, very accurate. So how do we go about implementing this? Because as you can see, this is a RAG pattern that has been implemented. So if you can break down the concepts that I was just explaining earlier, based on this screenshot, believe it or not, but the few lines of code that you see on the screen is all you need to implement what you're seeing on this screenshot. So we're working with, I think it's a certain YouTube library, I can't remember the name, but basically you see that we are extracting the transcript from that video. And then we're using a function from LangChain.js. We're going to load the transcript, store it in raw documents. And then we're going to use a splitter method to split or to chunk this information. So when you're building a knowledge base, it's not like one full document. You basically slice it up into smaller chunks. And so you don't have to worry about implementing that entire complex workflow, because the framework that we're using in this case, LangChain.js, is actually taking care of all that behind the scenes, and it's just giving you methods you can call to just easily abstract away all these steps. So you can see that we're easily just passing in the YouTube transcript. We're telling it, hey, I want you to split this into chunk sizes of 1500 characters, and then store these chunks in documents. That's basically all we need to do to build the knowledge base. And then when it comes to embedding this, We are working with a local model. So we're working with Olama in this case. We're working with the nomic embed text model. It's a very small model that is basically just going to convert this text into its vector representation. We're working with FileStore, a local option for VectorDB. And then basically we have this add documents method that basically just stores both your data and its vector representation in your vector database. So all this complexity is hidden away, and you just have to write these very few lines of code. Then when it comes to the retriever and the generator components, the retriever is actually a single line of code, as you can see here. And for the generator, you can see how we are passing in the system prompt. We are now assembling everything in the RAG chain. And then we've enabled streaming here, so you can see how we are passing in the question, and you end up with the application that I was talking about. So again, I just shared that as a brief introduction for you to see the value of us working with like such frameworks that really make our work as easy as possible. So that's something that you will definitely explore more as we get into the next and future programs. Then what most of you are talking about on the chat is agents and the new cool kid in town, MCP, and the fact that you're able to actually go through a quest that really gave you a proper introduction to this. So in the quest, you are able to build a local agent fast. You used the AI Toolkit extension. You are able to build an MCP server. So this MCP server acted as a wrapper around the Node OS library or utility that allows you to interact with the operating system. And you are able to define 4 tools, a tool that will allow an agent to query information about your computer's architecture, the host name, your average CPU usage, as well as the computer's uptime. So you're able to wrap all this functionality in an MCP server, and then you are able to add this to an agent, and the agent is able to have these extended capabilities. So on this screenshot, you can see that I'm using GitHub Copilot. Agent mode is my agent. I passed in the MCP server that is running locally. And then you can see that GitHub Copilot is designed to answer programming-related questions. But in the event where you wanted to have access to external services, external tools, you can see how I pass in the tools. I give it the list of tools that I have available for it. And then I can pass in a question like, based on my current computer spec, and I won't even give it my computer specification, I'm asking it to recommend like my next computer upgrade, and I'm into gaming. So with such a prompt, you'll see that GitHub Copilot, agent mode in its own understanding of the tools that it has, is able to identify that it has 4 tools that can help it meet or answer the question that I asked it. So it runs the 4 tools, and then it comes back and says that, okay, here's your current device. And based on this is my recommendation in terms of what you can get as an upgrade. So this is a real practical implementation of how you can see how to extend your basic agent and give it, superpowers. People talk about MCP, the MCP concept as a way of giving agents superpowers to work beyond their limitations. So that's something you're able to implement. And then you went beyond that again. So you moved from local, and you were able to also deploy an agent on AI Foundry. You did this all from VS Code without leaving your environment using the AI Foundry VS Code extension, which is still fairly new. And the fact that you guys were using it, if you had any questions or any feedback or encountered any bugs, the team is actively looking out for areas of improvement. So ensure that you log any bugs that you get so that this product can be improved. But basically, you are able to build remote agents. You're able to give the remote agent access to additional tools. So actually, this is where we hit the first limitation, since Bing grounding is a resource that is only available in specific subscriptions. So it's only available in the Azure free or pay-as-you-go subscription. So for those who are participating and they are on Azure for Students, they were not able to successfully complete this step. But for the upcoming build-a-thon, what we're going to do is that we're going to define an alternative path for anyone who is on a different type of subscription. So in this case, in addition to the tools, the built-in tools that you can add onto your agents, and now I'm talking about agents that are hosted on AI Foundry, we have the built-in tools that you can use, like bean grounding. But if you're not able to use these built-in tools, something that you can do is you can also define your own custom functions that will allow you to basically implement what we are talking about. You can connect to an external API, and you will be able to have the exact same outcome. So for this quest, the outcome was you basically added an agent mode to your application, and then now you are able to actually have the agent interact with the internet and do real-time queries. But to achieve a similar outcome, for those who are not able to get the bean grounding resource, we're going to define an alternative path where you can come in and write your own custom functions. Then in this case, you will see that you're going to use like the Open Weather Map API. This is free. So you define your two functions, define how this connects to the API, and then you're basically just going to provide these functions as tools to the agent. Okay, so when your agent runs, so if on your application you run the agent mode, you'll see that whenever a tool is required to satisfy a user's need, the agent will automatically and autonomously discover the tools that you've given it and just invoke the right tool for the job. So basically, this is something that you're going to factor in the next iteration, given that we saw a lot of people who are not able to access the Bing service. Then the last thing that I think I wanted to highlight was JS, which I think for this, I'll just do less of talking and just more of showing you what was really a key aha moment for me. I hadn't really worked with JS before the build-a-thon, so this was also new for me. So I'll ask Bethany to be on standby to approve a pull request that I'm going to start in a few minutes. But to show you, like the real value of JS that I really saw was that, and as the name suggests or implies, JS is all about using prompting as your new coding mechanism, right? So you're basically just implementing code, which is a series of prompts. And for me, that was really, really key. So I'm just going to start this code space. And what I want to show you is right now, if you go on the repository, we see we have 10 issues. So we have 10 projects that have been submitted. But on the repo, if you scroll down to the participating projects, we only have 6 projects that have been added, right? So we have a few that are yet to be updated. And as you can see, the structure that we're using is the name of the project, 1-sentence description, and then a link to the project. Now I can manually do these updates, or since I've learned about JS, I can easily automate this task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to VS Code. And as you can see, I have the README that has just the 6 projects. So the task that I'm doing here is updating this table to match all the project submissions that we have. And I want to do this in the shortest time possible. So instead of manually doing this, I'm going to work with JS. And as you can see here, this is a simple JavaScript file, but it's not looking like the typical code that you work with. So you'll see we start here by listing the issues in the repository, and then we store the submission issues. And then basically now this is where things start to be very interesting for me, is that I now start defining what I need to be done in natural language. So ideally you'd be writing code to do all this, but I'm coming in and I'm going to say something like, hey, so I'm going to append my prompt to the model that I'll be using here. And I'll be like, you are a project list management assistant. This is the task that I want you to do. I want you to process the submission issues. And for each valid submission that follows the template, I want you to, number 1, generate an executive summary, because most of these project submissions have like a full paragraph description of what they are. But for the README, we just need a 1-sentence description. I can manually do that. or work with a model to help me with this task. And then, so I'm passing in the instructions in natural language. So when people started saying that English is the new programming language, I think this was my aha moment, seeing how I can do all this without like having to think about writing regular expressions, to like extract specific items. This was really a key moment for me. And so basically, I'm just going to run this script. And instead of using the GenAI script tool, I'm actually going to work with GitHub Copilot. And I'm going to invoke the GenAI script participant. I'm going to say that I want to run my GenAI script, which is called projects. That's the name of the file. And as soon as I hit enter, I expect this to be executed. I already passed in the configuration to GitHub models. So I'm using a model to basically just help me achieve this task without having to write the traditional JavaScript code that we're used to. So again, if you didn't learn anything new through the Build-a-thon, I can almost guess that this is the first time you are learning about GenAI script. And as you can see, in a few minutes, working with GitHub Copilot as well as GenAI script, I get that my README has been actually generated, and I now have the projects that have all been submitted. So if you compare this with the issues, with the GitHub issues, you'll see that this is actually an up-to-date table that has all the projects. And if you can scroll, you'll see that it's actually grabbing the links as it should. So I'm basically just going to let me copy the entire table. I'm going to come into my README, and I'm just going to replace that with this. Again, this is the only thing I'm doing, and you can see it's super manual. And then that's it. I was trying to find a way to automate this, but I ran out of time, but I'm sure it's definitely possible. And yeah, so once I'm done, I'm basically just going to commit this, add new project. I am going to commit that. I'm also going to open up pull request. And I am going to assign Bethany to merge this for us. And so you can see this will really free up some time for me, and I'm able to focus on something else. And basically, this is one of the use cases. This is how I am using GenAI script. So I hope that you all found interesting ways to work with GenAI script for your use cases. So yeah, that's basically something that would have taken me some bit of time, but now I'm able to focus on something totally different. So we're almost out of time, and I wanted to share what will come next. Now you're done with the Build-a-thon this month. So for those who have completed the Build-a-thon, this is the next step for you. We have this form that I'll ask to be shared on the chat as well. So this form is what you will fill. This will give us details like your name, your email address for us to share the participation badge. And it will also ask you to give us some feedback in terms of how the experience was for you and some suggestions on what we can do better for the next programs that we will want to run with you. All right, so I think basically this wraps up today's session. Let me go back through the chats. Bethany, in case there's anything on the chat you want to highlight.
No, I guess the main thing is everyone is so excited about GenAI script and vibe coding and Copilot. So those are the main highlights in the chat. Yeah.
Mhm.
I've
And
marked
that's-
you here, so it's good. But there was I think when you copied the table, you copied the entire table and then you erased everything and you missed a section. But I think that we can be able to fix later. But yeah, it looks
So I
good. The entire table is good. So it's like, yeah, pretty interesting.
the small parts, the small role I had to play actually introduced an error, but AI was flawless. Interesting.
Yeah.
I see a question from Ezekiel. He says, I did not manage to get to the end. Is there a chance to complete it? I had a challenge. Yes, so Ezekiel, as I said, we've extended the deadline. So initially it was today, but you have until the rest of the week, so up until Friday. Ensure that you complete the project, you submit your project, and then you fill in this form. This form will just give us the details we need to send the badge to you. And in the process, you'll also be giving us some feedback and suggestions in terms of what to improve next. We're actually coming to the end of the fiscal year. So we are now actively planning for the next year, and we want to factor in your feedback in terms of programs and content that you want to see from us to help you in your upskilling journey. So definitely we want to learn from you in terms of what works and what does not work. If you want more of such build-a-thons, we will plan for these. If you want hackathons, if you want different engagement styles, workshops, that's definitely something that we can put into consideration based on your feedback. All right, so I see a lot of excitement as you pointed out. Yeah, so if you could maybe drop the survey link. We have someone asking for it. Danny, I've put this on the chat. Okay, fantastic. That's the link. Or you can also scan the QR code on the screen. This will direct you to a form. You can fill it out with your details. And remember to leave some feedback for us. Then as we wrap up, the last announcement to make here is that we are going to convert the repository you've been working with to be like a living repo that will just have all the up-to-date information and exercises around different areas of AI and agentic development with JavaScript and TypeScript. So that's why at the beginning, I strongly recommended that if you've not yet started the repository, that will really be helpful. So give it a star, give it some likes, follow, and then ensure you bookmark that as a resource that you can actively use to come back and just have some exercises around different AI concepts. We'll keep updating it. As you've seen, there's a lot more we'll add. And also based on your feedback in terms of what you want to see next, we're basically just going to evolve it to be a practical learning tool for JavaScript developers. So that's something that I wanted to mention. And then the last thing is to leave you with what I hope will be your AI dev pack for you JavaScript developers. And the two resources that I'm going to share. Number one is, in addition to the repository that we've been talking about, we have the Microsoft for JavaScript Developers Developer Hub. So this is a page that has a consolidation of what we are working on for JavaScript developers from Microsoft. So again, this will be shared on Discord, and this will also be shared on the chat. I think it's the summary. It's the summary link. So basically, you'll be able to find any new announcements, any new samples that we have, anything that is relevant to JavaScript, TypeScript developers. And then as you can see, we also have access to different curriculums and courses that we have. You have access or just information around AI frameworks and libraries you can use, as well as tools that are relevant for you as JavaScript developers. And the last resource I'll share is our new, well, not really new, but our generative AI for beginners with JavaScript course. Now, compared to what you've been going through throughout the month of June, this course is it's more theory because it talks about the concepts in depth. So it will introduce you to different concepts. We recently just added lessons on MCP, but if you scroll down, you'll see that we have different lessons around an introduction to Gen AI as a concept, prompt engineering, how you can structure outputs for your models, RAG, tool calling, MCP, etc. So again, this is a free open source curriculum that you can take. It's also not a typical curriculum because it's like a time, it follows like a time travel sort of fiction story. So you're able to actively learn in a new design. You're able to basically just implement different concepts using JavaScript. So again, this is a really good resource that you can use to just upskill in AI and agentic development. And so with that, I think we will wrap up. I see some feedback coming in. Someone is saying hackathons would be great too. So next time we'll see how we can factor in and put that into consideration. But yes, I think this is something we can definitely try out in the future. And yeah, with that, happy to wrap up the session. Bethany, do you have any final words before we release everyone?
Yeah, nothing from my end. I just got joined by a very cute cat, so nothing else.
All right. So yeah, awesome. Yeah. So I think for me, this is really great. I mean, the feedback that you're all sharing. Please ensure that you join us on Discord. Ensure that you are going to join us on Discord. Let me go back to my slides. We can just switch to the slides for a minute. So if you go on the AI Discord channel, you'll see that there's actually more than what we have been doing. So we've only been using the JS AI Build-a-thon channel. I hope you've all had a chance to explore different channels. We have the JavaScript SDK channel as well. And then we have different channels that focus on different angles. We have like community events that happen. We have AMA sessions. So if you want to join sessions with different product groups, they are talking about the different services. So you're more than welcome to explore this really awesome community. And yeah, connect with us. And if we have any new announcements, any new programs, we're definitely going to share that with you. So with that, I'll say this is the official close of the Build-a-thon, but the extension, the few days extension that we have, really looking forward to seeing all of you submit your projects by end of week. We'll have a spotlight award for whoever has the most upvotes. I think there's someone who's really doing a good job on his submission, is really getting the entire community to vote for his project. So ensure that you definitely share your project with folks, ask them to vote for your project, and then we'll be sharing more communication towards the end of the week. But ensure you fill out the survey form for us to get the details we need to get you the badge. All right, so with that, thank you all so much for joining. For any questions, any concerns, please, you know where to find us. We are on Discord. You can also reach out to us on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.